Ahead of the 2025 Belgian Grand Prix, the Formula One world was once again shaken by an unexpected move from Lewis Hamilton. The seven-time world champion publicly criticized his new team, Ferrari, for being unable to meet his expectations since the start of the season. This time, his demands were not just technical input, they were an ultimatum that could potentially alter the course of Ferrari's project. What exactly is Hamilton demanding, Nand? Why has it shaken the F1 paddock so much? Let's discuss it. Behind the walls of the Scuderia Ferrari team, amidst the roar of engines and the clicking of data devices, an unseen battle is unfolding, a conflict unwritten in contracts and unseen by cameras. Yet its vibrations are felt from Maranello to Spa, a control war between Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari. The focal point of this battle is something seemingly trivial. Steering settings. For most drivers, power steering is simply a matter of comfort. But for Lewis Hamilton, it's an extension of his mind. It's an instinct honed over 12 years at Mercedes, with a car that responds like a reflex. When he turns, the car understands. When he holds on, the car follows. However, from the moment he entered the SF25, Hamilton noticed something strange. The car refused to speak his language. That's how one of Ferrari's senior engineers described the growing tension behind closed doors at Maranello. Every time Hamilton requested a steering rack recalibration to make the car more responsive and aggressive when entering corners, he received the same answer: too long to implement. However, according to several internal sources, the answer appeared to be merely technical on the surface. It wasn't about time or logistics, it was politics, said a source familiar with the team's internal dynamics. Fundamentally, what was at stake was more than just steering feel. What was really being tested was who had the power to define the car's character. The situation became more complicated when Leclerc accidentally tried a steering configuration, resembling Hamilton's preference during a simulator session at Maranello. What happened next was completely unexpected. He abruptly removed his headset, stopped the simulation, and muttered softly but sharply, "It doesn't respond like before." That short sentence echoed louder than a scream. It was a casual comment, but in the context of Ferrari's internal politics, it was an emergency signal. Within minutes, the tested configuration was erased from the system, quietly, permanently, and without a trace. The engineers euphemistically called it driver feedback alignment, but everyone in the room knew the real meaning. Charles Leclerc held absolute veto power. Behind Ferrari's grand headquarters, the power structure was becoming clear. Every technical request from Hamilton now had to go through a long filtering chain full of layers of evaluation and validation. Meanwhile, what about Leclerc's input? It was implemented immediately, sometimes in just a few hours or even minutes. One internal source called this process a form of behind-the-scenes narrative control. Others called it what it was. At Ferrari, Leclerc wasn't just a driver, he was the king. But Hamilton didn't bluff. He didn't curse, pressure through the media, or criticize publicly. He remained silent. His silence wasn't a sign of weakness, though. It was a strategy. It was a weapon. During the simulation session before the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, he didn't argue. There was no argument. He simply took notes. He observed. He analyzed every response the car had to every change at Ferrari. He knows all too well that speaking too early means opening a gap. It shows weakness. Hamilton is no fool. According to a technician close to his team, he's logging a dossier of resistance. Behind that almost frozen calm, Hamilton is preparing something, a change. If the timing is right, this breakthrough could alter the course of Ferrari's history and even the history of Formula One itself. Ahead of FP1 for the Belgian Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton made a surprising yet calculated move. Despite unseen internal tensions, the seven-time world champion invoked a performance clause in his contract, an exclusive provision that allows him to request specific technical configurations. Without undergoing a multi-step evaluation process, he requested a steering setup nearly identical to the one he used in the 2020 Mercedes W11, a car considered one of the most dominant in Formula One history. The setup was heavier on center, boasted aggressive torque, and offered a sharp, intuitive lateral response. To some at Ferrari, this request sounded like a warning siren. It wasn't just a technical change, It was a statement of direction. And when Hamilton spoke, he left no room for compromise. "If I can't feel the car, I can't fight with it," he told one of the senior engineers firmly. A simple statement, but one with a profound impact. An invisible dividing line now ran through the T-knot, just between the two drivers, but also between two different philosophies and approaches to achieving a common goal. At Spa, that resistance wasn't expressed through harsh words or open conflict. Rather, it was expressed through choice, through the wheel, and through the courage to say, "Enough." Charles Leclerc stuck with a modified version of the stable baseline he was used to, a more progressive, safer, and simulation-friendly setup. It wasn't a radical choice, but rather a methodical approach. That had brought him consistency. However, for the first time since the season began, he felt pressure from within. Not from his opponents, but from his own teammates. The atmosphere in the garage was different. There were no words. The usual smiles were absent. Only a thick silence and averted gazes remained. Everyone knew that if Hamilton's setup worked and his approach proved superior, the entire structure of Ferrari's technical approach would be called into question. Moreover, Leclerc's position as the centerpiece of development could be jeopardized. Ferrari held its breath. This wasn't just a practice session. It was a silent battle over who was right when FP1 began its. All eyes in the paddock were on Hamilton's first lap, which was more than just a lap time. It was a statement. This wasn't just a technical evaluation. It was an existential test for Ferrari. Being scrutinized are not just performance and the car's body language, but also steering wheel gestures and Hamilton's facial expressions. Attention is being paid to how attuned he is to a machine not built for him. If Hamilton dances effortlessly around Eau Rouge with the confidence of a maestro, if he sweeps through Sector 2 with millimeter-perfect precision, as if every corner were already etched into his memory, if he blasts out of Stavelet faster than Charles Leclerc, the modern icon of Ferrari, then it's about more than just speed. It's proof. It's proof that Hamilton's instincts may be more accurate than Ferrari's entire design philosophy of the past 5 years. If that's true, the entire team will have to face the harsh reality that they've been building a car for the wrong person. One phrase recurs in internal notes leaked to the media. If this works, it invalidates the baseline. Hamilton proves that his method is faster, more efficient, and more natural. Ferrari will have to concede that they've been heading in the wrong direction. This is precisely what some at Ferrari fear. Not Hamilton's failure, but his success. His success could shake the foundations of their strategy, forcing the team and engineers to question every technical assumption they've made since the start of the season. Imagine it. In the midst of Maranello's grand, tradition-steeped buildings, an entire long-term plan must be torn apart and rebuilt from scratch. This would be a radical move that goes against the conservative nature of the Italian manufacturer and threatens the image and pride they've so carefully guarded. Is Ferrari ready to sacrifice its ego for the sake of evolution? Or will they continue to hide behind tradition and compromise? Let us know your thoughts below.